On a dingy edge of Doylestown, Pennsylvania, an old factory has been converted into a biotech incubator. This is a place where new, life-changing drugs are developed, and that is the aim of this man.
I'm Doug Brenneman. I'm a neuropharmacologist that has had a background as an NIH scientist for 22 years. In addition, after I left NIH, I joined Johnson & Johnson, where I was a team leader focused on central nervous system therapeutics. Another reason
Doug has spent the last 5 years researching cannabis, a substance about which he is completely conflicted. One part he likes, one part he loathes.
I also developed a strong interest in CBD and also a very strong aversion to THC, which I believe has no redeeming qualities.
Interesting dichotomy.
It's an extraordinary dichotomy. I'm just telling you, that's where I'm at.
You heard that right. Dr. Brenneman is no fan of marijuana, but when he learned about the potential of CBD, he changed his mind.
So when it comes to cannabidiol, would you describe yourself as a convert?
Yes, unequivocally.
Learning part of the brain.
The power behind Brenneman's conversion? In his research for the biotech firm Cannalife, he discovered CBD can be a game changer as a treatment for pain. The kind of pain Eugene Monroe feels every day. The kind of pain for which opioids have been the prescribed answer. The same opioids that claim the lives of 60,000 Americans every year.
Number one use of cannabis and CBD, and that is getting rid of intractable pain.
Might what you're doing research on right now be an answer to the opioid epidemic?
If I didn't believe the answer to that question was yes, we would not be doing it.
What might this mean in that context?
Well, CBD actually can form an alternative, actually in terms of getting people off of opiates without the abuse potential.
Imagine a kind of pain reliever that doesn't just provide comfort, but could save lives.
That's huge.
It's enormous. Exactly. So there's lots of reasons, and you've just hit on a big one. Do we know that that's in fact the case now? No. Is it experimentally addressable? Yes.
It's the science behind pharmaceuticals.
Dean Petkanis is the CEO of Cannalife, where Doug Brenneman is working on cannabidiol. What's the number on the patent?
It's 6630507, and the title is Cannabinoids as Antioxidants and Neuroprotectants.
That's a U.S. patent.
It is.
Be prepared to be confounded in one of those classic governmental right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing sort of fiascos. On the one hand, the DEA says pot has no medicinal use, and on the other, the National Institutes of Health believes cannabis could be big medicine. In fact, the NIH has a patent on pot. I mean, the government has a patent that says there's something in marijuana that has medicinal value?
Yes, the government has a patent that was developed by inventors in an intramural research project through NIH, through National Institutes of Health, so it's taxpayer funded.
Petkanis has licensed the patent, which means he can use certain cannabis-based compounds and develop them into medicines. Medicines that could turn into the payday of a lifetime for him and the government.
Reading the government's patent. A lot of research went into it. And when you look into that, you realize that some very prominent scientists turn their attention to these structures, how they would be useful as medicine in the treatment of these diseases, Alzheimer's, epilepsy, Down syndrome.
On top of that, Petkanis claims CBD can be an effective treatment for concussions, traumatic brain injury, and CTE, the disease that plagues a number of former football players.
In the area of traumatic brain injury, or concussive injury, or CTE, the potential is to reverse toxicity, protect the brain.
Protect the brain?
Right, protect the brain, before, during, and after.
How big a breakthrough is this potentially?
This is all new country, Harry. This is stuff that, because of the restrictions of the Controlled Substance Act, nobody touched cannabinoids at all. They just left it there and left it alone.
Back in the Cannalife lab in Pennsylvania, Dr. Brenneman is hard at work trying to determine for certain if weed is really a wonder drug.
Give me a hand signal. Potential for cannabidiol is where?
Way up there.
Right.
And I say that from just the breadth of therapeutic areas which it's relevant to. The anecdotal evidence here is something that really gets your attention. Why don't we have the clinical goods here to make the case? Mm-hmm. And it all comes down to the scheduling of this compound as a Schedule I compound.
But is all that about to change?
Open.
You've heard from parents, from researchers,
And what our goals are with not
an
only
entrepreneur,
CBD,
Good.
and a former pro football player. All have extolled the virtues of medical marijuana. Who you will not hear from is federal law enforcement. Our request for interviews with the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Department of Justice, and the Attorney General of the United States were all turned down. What we had hoped to do was show them this video.
And my daddy is very strong.
Haley Smith is a different child after 3 years of taking CBD oil. One recent poll shows more than 90% of Americans think medical marijuana should be legalized.
But that's why it should be regulated.
Among them, Senator Gillibrand.
Is Washington at fault here for something? Is there blame to be placed somewhere?
Absolutely. Congress has not done the right thing. They have not moved this off Schedule I to Schedule II so the research can be done. Congress has not listened to their constituents who are overwhelmingly saying we want marijuana to be legalized, we want it to be available to patients, we want normal research and regulation.
Her Republican colleague from Colorado, Cory Gardner, agrees, but says marijuana still carries a stigma in Washington, and change will not be easy.
I think it's a matter of education. I'll never forget, I had one member of Congress when I was trying to explain to him medical marijuana and the tax laws and other things. And this member's comment was, well, y'all might have potheads in Colorado, but I got Baptists. And they're just like, well, that's not what I'm talking about.
You have good reflexes.
Researcher and epilepsy expert Orrin Davinsky couldn't agree more.
If you could knock on the door of the DEA or of Congress, what would you tell them?
I would not say maybe we should reschedule this drug. I would say we absolutely have to reschedule the drug.
Should marijuana be a Schedule I drug?
Absolutely not. There are known medical uses. Patients have used this drug. They benefit from it. It has medical impacts. There's no way under any scenario this should be a Schedule I drug.
You know, there are people who are watching this and just, you're playing to the marijuana crowd. You're playing to the demographics. You're playing to who knows who. But that stuff, I don't want that evil weed in my town.
I don't think they'll feel that way if they know it is the best medicine for veterans who have PTSD. I don't think they'll feel that way if they know there are children suffering across this country who have 100 seizures a day that you could end overnight with the right medicine.
We owe it to these patients and families to identify new therapies.
At an FDA hearing just weeks ago, committee members signaled that Epidiolex from Dr. Davinsky's research will likely become the first cannabis-based medicine to be approved by the federal government. Senator Gillibrand believes the day medical marijuana is legalized and regulated at the federal level is coming, perhaps sooner than you think.
I think we get this done in the next 2 years.
Really?
I really do. I think it's moving very fast. I think the national conversation about it is changing. I think constituents are now bringing this up to their members of Congress, and I think there will be less room to be against certainly medical marijuana.
Meanwhile, people who believe medical marijuana is an effective treatment for themselves or their children still have the task of lobbying their state legislatures. The Virginia families, bolstered by new arrivals to their group like Tamara Netzel, this year won permission for any patient with any medical condition legal access to the oils epilepsy patients can use.
So glad you called me 5 years ago from Colorado.
It's a battle they wish they didn't have to fight, but for the victories they have won, they are grateful.
How big a difference has medical marijuana made in Jennifer's life?
Life-changing. Life-changing.
Saved her life. It has saved her
No
life.
doubt. No question. She is a different child now, and she has hope.
She has hope to have some kind of a normal future, and before...
That wasn't there.
What would you tell people out there who are listening to you and still have serious doubts?
I guess I'd beg them to really read and listen and do the research, because I'm telling you, it works. You can't judge a book by its cover. You can't hear the word marijuana and say no. There are not this many people that it's helping by accident. I mean, it works.
And for the Smith family, a first this past Christmas. A family vacation.
What's the most important thing I need to know?
It changes lives. I mean, it gives you a life. I mean, Haley was pretty much just existing before this. And to some extent, our family was just existing. Now we're living.